You wake up every morning telling yourself you're building something meaningful. You check your bank account, count your small victories, maybe even feel proud of how far you've come from where you started. But late at night, when the noise stops and you're alone with your thoughts, there's this quiet voice that whispers the truth you don't want to hear. You're still not where you thought you'd be by now. You're still playing small. You're still thinking like someone who hopes for wealth, instead of someone who commands it. I am Solomon, and I lived as the richest man who ever walked this earth. Not just in gold or silver, but in something far more valuable. I possess the kind of wealth that doesn't disappear when markets crash or kingdoms fall. The kind that builds legacies and transforms bloodlines forever. What I'm about to share with you isn't another get-rich-quick scheme or motivational speech that fades by tomorrow morning. This is the exact blueprint I used to think, decide, and act in a way that made scarcity impossible in my life. You're going to discover how to shift from someone who chases money to someone who attracts wealth naturally, effortlessly, and permanently. Most people spend their entire lives trying to get rich while thinking poor. They focus on the strategies, the tactics, the latest trends, but they never address the real problem: their mind, their identity, the way they see themselves and the world around them. Today, you have a choice. You can keep living as someone who admires wealthy people from a distance, or you can start thinking like royalty, like someone who was born to rule over circumstances instead of being ruled by them. This isn't about positive thinking or visualization. This is about rewiring the very foundation of how you process reality. If you're ready to stop settling for less than what you were created for, if you're tired of watching others live the life you know you deserve, then you need to hear every word of this message. Hit that subscribe button now, because what you're about to learn will separate you from everyone whose content with ordinary. This is your moment to step into the mind of a king. Number 1, who was Solomon? There's something that haunts successful people in the quiet moments between their achievements. You've climbed mountains others said were impossible. You've built what others only dream of. Yet when you look in the mirror, there's still that gnawing question that refuses to leave you alone. Who are you really? Strip away the titles, the accomplishments, the bank statements, and what remains. Most people spend their entire lives accumulating things to avoid answering that question. I spent my life discovering that the answer to that question is the source of all true power. I am Solomon, son of David, and I ruled the greatest kingdom the world has ever known. But here's what they don't tell you in the history books. My wealth wasn't an accident. My wisdom wasn't a lucky gift from heaven. Everything I became was the result of understanding one fundamental truth about existence that most people never grasp. Your identity shapes your reality, not the other way around. Picture this. Imagine walking into any room and knowing, not hoping, not wishing, but knowing with absolute certainty that you belong at the head of every table, that every conversation waits for your words, that every deal bends toward your vision. That's not arrogance. That's identity. That's what happens when you understand who you truly are and stop apologizing for taking up space in a world that needs your greatness. When I was young, before the crown, before the gold, before the reputation that still echoes through centuries, I had to make a choice that would define everything. God appeared to me in a dream and offered me anything I desired. Anything. Most people would have asked for wealth. Others would have begged for power. Some would have pleaded for long life or victory over their enemies. But I asked for wisdom, not because I was noble or pure, but because I understood something that changed everything. Wisdom is the foundation upon which all other forms of wealth are built. Without it, everything else crumbles. That single decision transformed me from a young king trying to fill his father's shoes into the richest man in history. But here's the deeper truth. The moment I chose wisdom over wealth, wealth became inevitable. The moment I chose character over comfort, comfort became my servant instead of my master. The moment I chose to become someone worthy of abundance, abundance had no choice but to find me. You see, most people approach wealth backwards. They think if they can just get enough money, they'll finally feel valuable. If they can just achieve enough success, they'll finally feel worthy. If they can just accumulate enough possessions, they'll finally feel secure. But wealth doesn't create worth. Worth creates wealth. Security doesn't come from what you own. It comes from who you are. My kingdom stretched further than any empire before or since. My wisdom drew queens from distant lands just to hear me speak. My wealth was so legendary that the Bible says I made silver as common as stones in Jerusalem. But none of that happened because I chased it. It happened because I became the kind of person who naturally attracts those things. There's a difference between being rich and being wealthy. Rich people have money. Wealthy people have systems, influence, and the ability to create value wherever they go. Rich people worry about losing what they have. Wealthy people know they can rebuild anything because they understand the principles that created it in the first place. Rich people buy things. Wealthy people build legacies. I didn't just rule a kingdom. I embodied an entire philosophy of existence. Every decision I made was filtered through the question, what would someone who truly understands their worth do in this situation? Every relationship I built was founded on the principle that when you add value to others' lives, your own value multiplies exponentially. Every investment I made was based on the understanding that time is the only currency that matters, and how you spend it determines the return on your entire existence. The world remembers me not because I was perfect, but because I understood the weight of my own potential and refused to waste it on small thinking. I understood that mediocrity is not a lack of ability. It's a lack of identity. It's not knowing who you are, and therefore settling for who you think you should be. Here's what I want you to understand. You were not born to struggle. You were not created to live in fear of bills or stress about tomorrow or wonder if you have what it takes. You were designed for dominion. You were built for influence. You were crafted for wealth in every sense of the word. But wealth will only come when you stop thinking like someone who hopes to be wealthy and start thinking like someone who already is. The first step to becoming wealthy is not finding the right opportunity or learning the right strategy. It's answering the question that most people avoid their entire lives. Who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when the pressure is on? Who are you when everything you've built is threatened? The answer to that question will determine whether you spend your life chasing wealth or having wealth chase you. Your reputation is not what people say about you when you're in the room. Your reputation is what happens in the world because you exist. My reputation preceded me into every negotiation, every alliance, every decision that shaped nations. Not because I was perfect, but because I was consistent. Not because I never failed, but because I never compromised on who I chose to be. Number 2, principles that sustained his wealth. You know what keeps most people broke? It's not a lack of opportunities. It's not a bad economy or unfair circumstances. It's the belief that wealth comes from doing the right things instead of being the right person. You can have all the strategies in the world, but if your foundation is built on sand, everything you build will eventually collapse. I sustained wealth that lasted generations not because I discovered some secret technique, but because I anchored my life on principles that cannot be shaken. The first principle that governed my entire existence was this: wisdom before wealth always. Most people get this backwards. They think wisdom is a luxury they'll pursue once they have enough money to afford it. They believe that first they need to get rich, then they can worry about getting wise. This is exactly why most wealth disappears within a generation. Wealth without wisdom is like a beautiful house built on a cliff that's crumbling into the sea. It might look impressive for a while, but it's doomed from the beginning. Think of wisdom as the operating system of abundance. You can have all the applications, all the programs, all the latest updates, But if your operating system is corrupted, nothing else functions properly. Wisdom is what allows you to recognize opportunities that others miss. Wisdom is what gives you the patience to build something lasting instead of something flashy. Wisdom is what teaches you the difference between what looks profitable and what actually is profitable. I made it a practice to seek counsel before every major decision, not because I was weak or indecisive, but because I understood that the cost of being wrong was always higher than the cost of being thorough. I surrounded myself with advisors who were smarter than me in their areas of expertise. I studied the mistakes of other kings. I learned from the failures of other kingdoms. Most people's pride costs them more money than their ignorance ever could. But here's where it gets deeper. Wisdom isn't just about making good decisions. Wisdom is about understanding the invisible laws that govern reality. There are principles operating in this world that work whether you believe in them or not, whether you understand them or not, whether you like them or not. The principle that you reap what you sow. The principle that what you focus on expands. The principle that how you treat people in positions beneath you determines how people in positions above you will treat you. I learned to turn time into an eternal asset, and this changed everything. Most people trade their time for money, and they wonder why they never feel wealthy. They sell their hours, their days, their years, and in return they get just enough to survive until the next paycheck. But I understood that true wealth comes from systems that work while you sleep, relationships that generate value for decades, and decisions that compound over time. Every morning I would ask myself this question: what can I do today that will still be paying dividends 10 years from now? What can I invest in today that will be working for me when I'm no longer working at all? Most people are so focused on the immediate return that they miss the exponential return. They're so worried about this month's profits that they sacrifice this decade's potential. I built alliances like other people build bank accounts. I understood that your network determines your net worth, but more than that, your relationships determine your reality. Every person you encounter is either adding to your life or subtracting from it. Every relationship is either moving you closer to who you want to become or pulling you back toward who you used to be. But building trust wasn't just a strategy for me, it was a way of being. I kept my word even when it cost me. I honored my agreements even when circumstances changed. I treated promises like sacred contracts. Why? Because I understood that your word is your bond, and your bond is your brand, and your brand is your most valuable asset. In a world full of people who say one thing and do another, being someone who does exactly what they say makes you priceless. There's a story about a merchant who came to my court asking for a loan. He had no collateral, no guarantee, nothing but his word that he would repay what he borrowed. My advisors thought I was foolish to trust him. But I saw something in his character that others missed. Not only did he repay the loan, he became one of my most valuable trading partners for decades. That single decision to trust character over circumstances generated more wealth than a dozen conventional investments. Here's the turning point that most people miss. Wealth is not about accumulation. It's about circulation. The more value you create for others, the more value flows back to you. The more problems you solve for other people, the more problems get solved in your own life. The more you contribute to others' success, the more success finds its way to your door. This means that building wealth is ultimately about building people, investing in relationships, creating systems that serve others while they serve you, understanding that the fastest way to get what you want is to help other people get what they want. Most people approach business like it's a zero-sum game. If you win, I lose. If I profit, you suffer. But I understood that the best deals are the ones where everyone walks away better than they arrived. The third principle that sustained my wealth was this: I built for generations, not just for myself. Every decision I made was filtered through this question: how will this affect my children's children? Most people make decisions based on how they feel today. I made decisions based on how my legacy would look 100 years from now. This long-term thinking changed how I approached everything. Instead of spending money, I invested it. Instead of consuming resources, I multiplied them. Instead of taking from the kingdom, I added to it. Instead of using my position for personal gain, I used my personal gain to strengthen my position. But perhaps the most important principle was this: I never forgot that everything I had was a stewardship, not an ownership. I was responsible for managing resources, relationships, and opportunities that were bigger than me. This kept me humble when success could have made me arrogant. It kept me generous when wealth could have made me stingy. It kept me focused on service when power could have made me selfish. The moment you understand that you are not the owner of your wealth but the manager of it, everything changes. You stop making decisions based on fear and start making decisions based on faith. You stop hoarding and start investing. You stop protecting what you have and start building what you could have. These principles didn't just sustain my wealth, they sustained my identity, my relationships, my purpose, and my peace of mind. Because true wealth is never just about money. Number 3, applying it to modern life. The tragedy of most people's financial life is not that they don't make enough money. It's that they never learn to think like wealthy people. You can give someone $1 million, but if they have the mindset of someone who struggles with money, they'll find a way to struggle with $1 million. You can take everything away from someone who thinks like a wealthy person, and they'll rebuild it all because they understand the principles that created it in the first place. The problem is not your circumstances. The problem is your thinking. Financial discipline is not about restricting yourself. It's about proving to yourself that you are mature enough to handle abundance. Most people want wealth, but they haven't demonstrated that they can be trusted with wealth. They overspend when they have little. They make impulsive decisions under pressure. They blame external circumstances for internal problems. How can you expect to be trusted with millions when you can't be trusted with hundreds? I want you to understand something that will change how you see every financial decision you make. Every dollar you spend is a vote for the kind of person you want to become. Every purchase is a declaration of your priorities. Every financial choice is either moving you closer to wealth or further away from it. There is no neutral ground. You are either building financial discipline or destroying it with every decision you make. Think of your money like an army. Every dollar is a soldier, and you are the general. A good general doesn't send soldiers into battle without a strategy. A good general doesn't waste resources on meaningless skirmishes. A good general thinks 3 moves ahead and positions their forces for maximum impact. But most people treat their money like a mob instead of an army. They send it out without direction, without purpose, without any plan for how it's going to serve their larger objectives. Financial discipline begins with understanding the difference between wants and needs, but it goes deeper than that. It's about understanding the difference between spending money and investing money. When you spend money, it's gone forever. When you invest money, it works for you while you sleep. When you spend money, you get temporary pleasure. When you invest money, you get permanent progress. Here's a practical truth that most people learn too late. Every recurring expense in your life is either building your future or stealing from it. Your rent or mortgage, your car payment, your subscriptions, your habits, your entertainment, your food choices. All of these monthly expenses are either moving you toward financial freedom or away from it. There is no such thing as a neutral expense. I learned to make decisions based on long-term vision instead of short-term emotion, and this single shift multiplied my wealth exponentially. Most people make financial decisions based on how they feel in the moment. They buy when they're happy, they sell when they're scared, they invest when they're optimistic, they withdraw when they're pessimistic. But feelings change, markets fluctuate, circumstances shift. The only thing you can count on is the power of time and compound interest working in your favor. if you give them the chance. Long-term thinking means you plant trees whose shade you'll never sit in. It means you make sacrifices today that your future self will thank you for. It means you choose discomfort now to avoid disaster later. Most people have this backwards. They choose comfort now and accept disaster later. They buy things they don't need with money they don't have to impress people they don't like. But here's what most people don't understand about long-term vision. It's not about sacrifice. It's about clarity. When you can see clearly where your decisions are leading, making the right choice becomes obvious. When you can see how today's spending affects next decade's options, living below your means becomes natural. When you can see how this investment will compound over time, patience becomes easy. Let me tell you about a decision I made that illustrates this perfectly. There was a time when I could have spent a massive amount of resources on expanding my personal palace, making it the most magnificent structure the world had ever seen. The immediate pleasure would have been immense. The status would have been impressive. But instead, I invested those same resources in trade routes, in relationships with foreign kingdoms, in systems that would generate wealth for generations. That single decision to choose long-term value over short-term gratification multiplied my wealth 1,000-fold. The most important principle for modern wealth building is this: prosperity begins with character, not a bank account. Your character is your capacity to handle whatever life brings you. Your character is your ability to make the right decision when no one is watching. Your character is your commitment to do what you said you would do, when you said you would do it, regardless of how you feel about it when the time comes. Character is what allows you to delay gratification. Character is what gives you the strength to save when everyone around you is spending. Character is what enables you to invest in your future when everyone around you is consuming their present. Character is what makes people trust you with their money, their time, their attention, their reputation. I've seen people with incredible talent waste their potential because they lacked character. I've seen people with modest abilities build extraordinary wealth because they had extraordinary character. I've seen brilliant business plans fail because the people executing them couldn't be trusted. I've seen simple business plans succeed because the people behind them kept their word no matter what. Here's the practical application. Start treating every financial decision as character training. When you're tempted to buy something you can't afford, see it as an opportunity to build the character of patience. When you're tempted to skip saving this month, see it as an opportunity to build the character of consistency. When you're tempted to take a shortcut that compromises your integrity, see it as an opportunity to build the character of honesty. Your relationship with money reveals everything about your character. How you earn it, how you spend it, how you save it, how you invest it, how you give it away. Money is simply a tool that amplifies who you already are. If you're generous, wealth will make you more generous. If you're selfish, wealth will make you more selfish. If you're wise, wealth will make you more wise. If you're foolish, wealth will make you more foolish. This is why most lottery winners end up broke within a few years. They received wealth without developing the character to handle it. They got the prize without earning the person who deserves the prize. But when you build wealth slowly, through discipline, through character, through serving others and solving problems, you become the kind of person who naturally attracts and maintains abundance. The goal is not just to become rich. The goal is to become the kind of person who thinks, acts, and decides like wealthy people do, because when you become that person, wealth becomes inevitable. Number 4, fleeting wealth versus lasting wealth. The saddest thing I witness is watching people celebrate temporary victories while building permanent defeats. They make a good deal and think they're wealthy. They have a good month and think they've figured it out. They buy something expensive and think they've arrived. But fleeting wealth is like a beautiful sunset. It's stunning while it lasts, but darkness always follows. Lasting wealth is like the sun itself. It rises every day. It powers everything in its orbit, and its influence extends far beyond what the eye can see. Most people confuse having money with being wealthy, and this confusion destroys more fortunes than any market crash ever could. Having money means you can buy things today. Being wealthy means you can create money tomorrow. Having money makes you feel secure until the money runs out. Being wealthy makes you feel secure because you know you can always create more. Having money is about accumulation. Being wealthy is about generation. Quick wealth is a trap that catches people who don't understand the difference between luck and skill. When someone makes money fast, they usually think it was because they're smart, talented, or chosen. They think they've discovered some secret that others missed. They think they can repeat the process at will. But quick wealth usually comes from circumstances aligning temporarily, not from systems working permanently. I've seen kingdoms rise and fall on quick wealth. I've watched empires built on single discoveries crumble when those discoveries were no longer unique. I've observed merchants who made fortunes overnight lose everything just as quickly because they never learned the principles that create sustainable abundance. Quick wealth is like a flash flood. It appears suddenly, it looks powerful, but it destroys everything in its path and disappears just as quickly as it arrived. The real secret to lasting wealth is not finding one big opportunity. It's creating systems that generate continuous abundance regardless of circumstances. A system is something that works whether you're working or not. A system is something that produces results consistently over time. A system is something that becomes more valuable the longer it operates. Think of your wealth like a river, not like a bucket. A bucket holds whatever you put in it, but once it's empty, it's empty. A river keeps flowing because it's connected to a source that's bigger than itself. Quick wealth is like filling buckets. You work hard, you get paid, you spend the money, you work hard again. Lasting wealth is like building rivers. You create systems that keep producing value long after you've stopped actively working on them. The systems I built were not complicated, but they were comprehensive. I established trade routes that would operate for centuries. I built relationships that would benefit my children and my children's children. I created institutions that would outlast my lifetime. I invested in knowledge, in infrastructure, in people, in processes that would keep generating value long after I was gone. But here's what most people miss about building lasting wealth. It's not about the systems themselves. It's about the thinking that creates the systems. Lasting wealth requires you to think beyond yourself, beyond your lifetime, beyond your immediate needs. It requires you to ask different questions, not what can I get, but what can I give, not how can I profit, but how can I contribute, not what's in it for me, but what's in it for everyone. I learned this principle from watching nature. The trees that survive storms are not the ones with the biggest trunks. They're the ones with the deepest roots. The rivers that never run dry are not the ones with the most water today. They're the ones connected to sources that never run dry. The mountains that last through ages are not the ones that rose fastest. They're the ones with the strongest foundations. Lasting wealth is built on principles that don't change when circumstances change. Honesty creates trust, and trust creates opportunity, and opportunity creates wealth. Excellence attracts recognition, and recognition attracts resources, and resources attract results. Service solves problems, and solving problems creates value, and creating value creates abundance. There's a story about two merchants who worked in my kingdom. Both of them started with the same amount of capital, the same opportunities, the same connections. The first merchant focused on making as much profit as possible on each transaction. He cut corners, he charged premium prices, he took advantage of every opportunity to maximize his immediate return. The second merchant focused on creating value for his customers. He delivered more than he promised. He charged fair prices. He built relationships that would last for decades. Within a year, the first merchant was making significantly more money. He lived in a larger house, he wore finer clothes, he appeared more successful by every external measure. The second merchant was reinvesting most of his profits back into his business, living modestly, building slowly. Many people thought he was foolish for not enjoying his success. But 10 years later, the situation had completely reversed. The first merchant had burned through relationships, destroyed his reputation, and found himself unable to make deals because no one trusted him. The second merchant had built a network of loyal customers, reliable suppliers, and respected partners. His business was growing exponentially because people trusted him, valued his service, and recommended him to others. The difference was not intelligence, not opportunity, not even effort. The difference was thinking. The first merchant thought like someone trying to get wealthy. The second merchant thought like someone who was already wealthy. The first merchant focused on transactions. The second merchant focused on relationships. The first merchant optimized for today. The second merchant optimized for forever. This is the turning point that separates temporary success from permanent significance. When you shift from thinking about what you can extract from the world to what you can contribute to the world, everything changes. When you stop trying to get rich and start trying to create value, wealth becomes inevitable. When you stop focusing on your profit and start focusing on others' problems, money starts flowing toward you naturally. The value lies not in what you accomplish for yourself, but in what you build beyond yourself. Your legacy is not what you accumulate during your lifetime. Your legacy is what continues to work after your lifetime is over. Your wealth is not measured by what's in your bank account when you die. Your wealth is measured by what keeps producing value after you're gone. True wealth creates more wealth. It doesn't just feed you, it feeds your children and your children's children. It doesn't just solve your problems, it solves problems for people you'll never meet. It doesn't just last for your lifetime. It gains momentum across generations. This is why the principles I'm teaching you have lasted for thousands of years. This is why my name is still associated with wisdom and wealth today. Not because of what I accumulated, but because of what I created that outlasted me. Lasting wealth is not about building something for yourself. It's about building something bigger than yourself, something that serves purposes greater than your own immediate needs, something that creates value that extends far beyond your own existence. Number 5, from knowledge to legacy. The most dangerous lie you can believe about your life is that it doesn't matter beyond yourself. You wake up, you work, you pay bills, you try to be happy, you try to be comfortable, you try to make it through another day without too much pain or struggle. And somewhere deep inside, there's this voice that whispers that maybe this is all there is. Maybe your life is just a brief flicker between birth and death, and when you're gone, nothing you did will have mattered. This lie is more destructive than any external enemy because it robs you of the very thing that makes wealth worthwhile, the understanding that what you build can outlast you. Every lesson I learned, every principle I discovered, every strategy I developed was never just for me. It was always for the generations that would come after me. This is why my wisdom has crossed centuries. This is why kings and queens still study my methods. This is why my name is still spoken with reverence thousands of years after I died. Not because I was perfect, but because I understood that true wealth is not what you keep, it's what you pass on. Knowledge without application dies with the person who possesses it. But knowledge that transforms into wisdom, wisdom that transforms into systems, systems that transform into institutions, institutions that transform into cultures, this kind of knowledge becomes immortal. It keeps working long after the person who created it has stopped working. It keeps solving problems long after the person who understood it has died. It keeps creating value long after the person who built it is gone. Think of wisdom like a seed. You can keep it in your pocket, admire it, even talk about it, but until you plant it, it's worthless. But when you plant it, when you water it, when you tend to it, that single seed can produce a tree that feeds thousands of people and produces millions of new seeds. The lesson you learn today, if you apply it and teach it and build systems around it, can impact people you'll never meet in ways you'll never know. This is what most people miss about learning from the past. They think history is about memorizing facts and dates. They think studying ancient wisdom is about collecting interesting information. They think learning from people like me is about finding secrets that no one else knows. But the real value of wisdom from the past is not in knowing it. It's in applying it to create a future that's better than the present. The reason learning from me is still relevant today is not because the world hasn't changed. It's because human nature hasn't changed. People still want security. People still want significance. People still want to know that their lives matter. People still struggle with fear and greed and pride and impatience. People still make the same mistakes that people have always made. The technology changes, the opportunities change, the surface circumstances change, but the underlying principles of wealth, wisdom, and success remain constant. But here's what makes the difference between knowledge that dies and knowledge that lives forever. It's not just learning the principles. It's becoming the kind of person who embodies the principles. It's not just understanding the concepts. It's integrating them into your character so deeply that they become part of who you are. It's not just knowing what to do. It's actually doing it consistently until it becomes natural. I want to tell you about the most important decision I made regarding my legacy. When I realized that my time was limited, I had to choose what to do with everything I had learned. I could have taken my knowledge to the grave. I could have kept my secrets to myself. I could have hoarded my wisdom like some people hoard their wealth. But I understood that wisdom unused is wisdom wasted. Knowledge that doesn't flow stops growing. So I made the choice to teach. I made the choice to write. I made the choice to build institutions that would preserve and pass on what I had learned. I made the choice to invest in people who would carry these principles forward. Not because I was noble or selfless, but because I understood that this was the only way to make my life truly count for something beyond myself. This is the turning point that transforms ordinary success into extraordinary significance. When you shift from learning for your own benefit to learning so you can benefit others, everything changes. When you stop asking, "What's in this for me?" and start asking, "What can I do with this for others?" you tap into a source of motivation and energy that never runs dry. When you stop thinking about your legacy as what people will remember about you and start thinking about it as what people will be able to accomplish because of you, your entire life gains a new level of meaning and purpose. The most successful people in history were not the ones who accumulated the most for themselves. They were the ones who contributed the most to others. They were the ones who solved problems that helped millions of people. They were the ones who created systems that made life better for generations. They were the ones who turned their personal journey into a public service. But creating a lasting legacy is not about becoming famous or being remembered. It's about becoming useful. It's about creating value that continues to serve people long after you're gone. It's about solving problems that stay solved. It's about building things that keep working. It's about teaching people things that they can teach to others. Your legacy is not what you accomplish. Your legacy is what you make possible for others to accomplish. Your legacy is not what you build for yourself. Your legacy is what you enable others to build for themselves. Your legacy is not what you know. Your legacy is what you help others learn. Your legacy is not what you become. Your legacy is what you help others become. This is why the principles I'm teaching you have power. Not because they're complicated or secret, but because they work when you work them. Not because they're new or innovative, but because they're timeless and reliable. Not because they guarantee easy success, but because they create sustainable growth. Here's what I want you to understand about leaving a lasting legacy. It doesn't require you to be perfect. It doesn't require you to be the smartest person in the room or the most talented person in your field. It requires you to be the kind of person who takes what they've learned and uses it to serve something bigger than themselves. It requires you to be the kind of person who sees their success as a stepping stone to helping others succeed. The mark you leave on this world will not be measured by what you accumulated during your lifetime. It will be measured by what continues to grow after your lifetime is over. It will not be measured by how much you kept for yourself, but by how much you gave away that kept multiplying. It will not be measured by how high you climbed, but by how many people you lifted up along the way. This is the ultimate test of everything you've learned. Does it make you more useful to the world, or does it just make you more comfortable in the world? Does it increase your capacity to serve others, or does it just increase your ability to serve yourself? Does it create value that extends beyond your life, or does it just create pleasure during your life? When you understand that your life is not about you but through you, when you realize that your success is not for you but through you to others, when you grasp that your wealth is not your reward but your responsibility, everything changes, because you're no longer just building a life, you're building a legacy. There comes a moment in every person's life when they stand at the edge of two worlds. Behind you lies everything you've known, everything you've accepted, everything you've settled for. Ahead of you stretches a realm of possibility that most people never dare to explore. You feel it now, don't you? That stirring in your chest, that quiet revolution beginning in your mind, that sense that you were meant for something far greater than what you've been living. Right now, as these words reach your heart, you are not the same person who began this journey with me. Something has shifted. Something has awakened. The seed of royal thinking has been planted in the soil of your consciousness, and nothing will ever be quite the same. You cannot unknow what you now know. You cannot unfeel what you now feel. You cannot unsee what you now see. Picture a caterpillar in its cocoon. There comes a moment when it must choose between the safety of what it has always been and the mystery of what it could become. The transformation is not comfortable. The old self must dissolve for the new self to emerge. But once those wings unfold, once it discovers it was never meant to crawl, there is no going back to the ground. This is your moment of choosing. Will you return to the familiar patterns that keep you small, or will you step forward into the unknown territory of your true potential? Will you go back to thinking like someone who hopes for wealth, or will you continue thinking like someone who creates it? The wisdom of ages flows through your mind now, but wisdom without action remains merely knowledge. Every breath you take from this moment forward is an opportunity to embody what you've learned. Every decision you make is a chance to prove to yourself that you are ready for the abundance that seeks you. Every step you take is either toward your kingdom or away from it. If you feel called to continue this transformation, if something inside you recognizes that this is just the beginning of your royal awakening, then join me on this deeper journey. Subscribe not just to a channel, but to a way of being. Subscribe to the possibility that your life can become a masterpiece of wisdom, wealth, and purpose. The ancient kings knew something that modern people have forgotten. You are not here by accident. You are here by appointment, and the appointment you have is with your own greatness.